All right. We are back with another episode of the Real Estate Investing Club. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day wherever you're at. As always, it's Friday here on the show. So bringing that Friday energy to you guys. I have to apologize before we get into it. I am getting over a little bit of a cold, so I sound a little nasally, but we'll get through it. Today's going to be a good day because we got Jack Bosch with us on the show. Jack has done over 5,000 flips. He focuses on land, which is a really interesting strategy. It's a really interesting asset class, I guess you'd like to say. And so I'm super excited to jump into this. Jack, thanks for hopping on the show. Oh, Jack,
Thank you for
you're
having me.
muted.
Somehow I got muted for a second. Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
There we go. All right. I told you before we got on here, we always like starting with stories to hear how people got to where they are. So why don't you take us to the beginning of your story in real estate and tell us how you got here?
All right. So I'm basically an accidental real estate investor. Or a very deliberate one, whichever way you want to go, right? Like basically, I didn't have a real estate background. I'm originally from Germany, came over here in 1997 to finish my college degree, then got a job, fell in love with the country, found my wife here, who is also an immigrant from Honduras. And our plan was very clear. Get a career, get into I had an MBA, go get a good job, go work your way up the career ladder, get into an executive or something like that, build up something there, work until you're 65 and retire. That was the plan. That's what I've been taught. And that's where I'm saying I'm an accidental entrepreneur, because never did I think I would actually get started in entrepreneurship in any kind of arena. But then what happened is in order to get the green card, I had to get a job in an industry that I didn't love. But you needed to do what you needed to do, right? So I basically select this is the only job that was offered for me where they were willing to sponsor my visa and then ultimately get me to the point of becoming a permanent resident here. So I took it, because otherwise would have meant leaving the country, convincing my girlfriend at the time to move with me, or split the relationship. And we really didn't want to do that. We wanted to make things work. So worked in that job, hated it, and that led me to ultimately decide that I needed to do something else in life. And we looked around, and then after a lot of deliberate search, we honed in on real estate. So, and then we decided, okay, we need to do real estate. You get the biggest bang for the buck. You get the biggest checks for the effort. You can do it part-time. And within that, we then stumbled into a niche, what we call land flipping, which is really land wholesaling, land seller financing, land splitting, and lately more also into the land development space.
Nice. So yeah, I mean, real estate oftentimes for people that come on this show, it seems like it wasn't the first thing that they were focused on in their career. It just kind of came about, and then all of a sudden they realize they're in real estate, they realize they love it, and they develop the career out of there. So it's definitely, it's a good thing to stumble into, that's for sure. Land is not something that a lot of people focus on, though. It's something that is kind of niche, but there's definitely a lot of opportunity in it. What originally got you into land?
Yeah, again, also that was a coincidence. We basically stumbled forward and failed forward in a way. First thing we wanted to do was, when I say we, my wife and I always have done this together. First thing we wanted to do was we heard about wholesaling. So we got ourselves a wholesale course. We went through the motions. We driving for dollars, drove around neighborhoods, found some boarded up houses, figured out who the owners were, sent them letters. Indeed, somebody contacted us. We put a house under a triplex under contract for $45,000. And turns out that we knew nothing about real estate. I mean, surprise, coming from Germany, it's like a completely different terminology, different cost of doing everything. The way of building is different. It's all brick built over there. It's all like the 2x4s over here. Didn't even know what the word 2x4 meant. So we failed because we estimated everything wrong, offered the wrong price, put it on the market for the wrong amount of money, and nobody wanted to buy it, so we had to back out of that deal. Then it was like, okay, if we can't deal with that, what's the next thing? We looked into the next thing, which was tax delinquent, like tax liens and tax deeds. And then we attended some tax lien auctions, bought some liens, and ended up they're all being redeemed 3 weeks later. We made like $3.82 in interest on those. We're like, That's not the way to go. Then we said, like, well, how about tax deed auction? So we live in Arizona. So my wife then went to California to attend an auction with all the money we had in our pocket, in her pocket, and went to an auction, wanted to bid on some properties, and everything was outbid left and right very, very quickly. So she came back with a tail between her legs and was like, no, that didn't work. And then we had a thought. And the thought that we had was still around the tax delinquent kind of world. And the thought was, well, if somebody doesn't want their property anymore to the degree that they're letting it go to the tax auction, but it takes in a state like California 5 years before a property comes up to auction, even 6 years for a property come up to auction. Why don't we, instead of attending the auction, figure out who owes property taxes and send them a letter? And that's what we started doing. And strangely, only landowners responded. But the landowners that responded, so we sent like, we got into, I think it was San Diego County, and we got in a list of tax delinquent owners, and only landowners responded. And so we ended up buying a piece of land behind the prison for $100. And then 3 weeks later, somebody buys it from us for $7,000. Then we applied it in Arizona to the tax delinquent list. And we had a few people contact us, and one of them gave us this piece of land, an acre, fully buildable with houses next door for $400. And we were like, well, you know what? $100, $400. What's the worst case scenario? Like, worst case is we get stuck with something that we pay $400 for, but then the neighbor bought it for $4,000 that same day. Like a couple of weeks later, we got 40 acres for $500, and it was like, I mean, with a little dirt road going to it, we're like, I mean, what's the worst case? That thing is going to be worth at least like $15,000, $20,000. Well, we sold it in 10 days for $10,000. And we're like, you know what? We can do this from home. We don't have to go see the properties. There's nothing to repair. There's no estimates of repairs. We don't have to meet any contractors there. We don't have to, again, the biggest thing for us, we didn't know what the repairs cost. So there's no repairs. We're confronted with people that in many cases owe property taxes for 3, 4, 5 years. They don't want these properties anymore. They're willing to give them to us for like 10, 20 cents on the dollar. I mean, the risk is almost zero. Why don't we just forget about houses, just focus on land, and then we go from there? Now, since then, we no longer focus on tax delinquent properties because we very quickly realized that also people that pay property taxes every year diligently, they grudgingly pay them. They still want to get rid of them. We have to pay them just a little bit more for their properties, but we can still pick these properties up for 20, 30, 40, 50 cents on the dollar, turn around, wholesale them for 60, 70, 80 cents on the dollar, make $5,000 to all the way to sometimes $300,000 on some deals, and not touch the property, don't estimate repairs, don't have to go see them, do everything from home. And it's really remote real estate investing without any of the what we now call the tenants, toilets, and termites. None of that involved. So that's when we're like, okay, land it is. So let's focus on land because it's way simpler than everything else. And nobody told us we couldn't do it.
I like that. Nobody told you couldn't do it, so that's where you landed. Yeah, land is a great strategy, and I like it because when you're speaking with landowners, they tend, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but they tend not to care as much. So like I focused on single family flips for a bit, and I absolutely hated speaking with homeowners because people had emotions about their home, and they have an idea of what they want for the home and what they think the home is worth. A lot of times they'll look at the Zillow value, and the Zillow value will be way inflated, and it's just kind of a headache dealing with single family homeowners. And now I'm doing commercial. We do self storage and mobile home RV parks. While it is a little bit, the owners tend to be a little bit more business oriented. There's still emotions involved. There's still unrealistic expectations in terms of what their value is, their property is worth. But when you're dealing with landowners, especially ones that they've owned it, in the family for X number of years, they're paying those property taxes. And a lot of times it's not even in their mind. They just don't care about these properties. And so the conversations go just a lot smoother. When
they're exactly right. They're a third of the deals we do are with heirs. Heirs don't care. Like, unless they really spent their childhood going every weekend onto that property and they have some really childhood memories there, which most don't, because most of the land they bought, we focus on 3 kinds of piece of land: infill lots, Infill lots, it's just a lot that sits between houses ready to build on. And the owners had plans to build in, but then life and circumstances changed and they decided not to build. And their kids never spent their summers on that piece of land. It's like a quarter acre, right? There's nothing. They're like, yeah, no, I got this from my dad. I don't care, right? If it's in the outskirts of town, it's just a pure bare piece of land that they also never went out there. And if it's like that 40-acre parcel, a little bit out there, sometimes you come across a heir that basically has a whole bunch of childhood memories to it, but 90% of them don't. They're like, yeah, my dad bought this. We never went out there. It just sat there. It costs property taxes. Nobody wants it. If you want it, you can have it. Is a frequent conversation, or at least they're like reasonably they're not sure what it's worth. Half of the people you talk to is like, I have no idea what it's worth. Make me an offer. And honestly, they don't care. Often cases, they just simply want the property tax bill to stop coming to them because they're not using the land. It's not necessarily an area that's shooting up in value, and they're not giving. They have no use for it. It's just a hassle. Yeah.
Yep. So you mentioned there the three different types of land that you look for. Can you go over that again?
Yeah. So infill lots. Infill lots are basically, think of a street, 35 houses, one empty lot. Often a residential lot, mostly, sometimes commercial lots. Commercial lots are a little bit harder to sell, but more profitable. So because they obviously have a little bit less of a buyer pool, you need somebody specifically that wants to do something with that commercial lot or is willing to take it and take the risk of rezoning it. Residential lots, residential lots are a little bit harder to get, but when you get one, you can sell it in 2 days to a builder and make $30,000. That's like it's very, very quick there because again, the market is mostly strong around the country. I mean, there's some areas where prices dipped a little bit, but there's no crash anywhere. And price levels are in most areas high enough for builders to build. And we have a multi-million house shortage. So builders are building if they can get their hand on land, or they're all looking for land. So that's the first way. Second way is when you go outside of town. So think about a growing city, perhaps 500,000 people, 1 million people, or something, a bigger city. We like to be around bigger cities that is growing. Well, where it's growing usually, where is it growing? A little bit in infill lots, but mostly on the outskirts. So you go outside of that growth path and you're within half an hour, let's say 45 minutes of that town, of that city, you're really attractive for multiple buyers. One of them is somebody who is basically hasn't saved enough for retirement. There's a sad statistic that 70% of all Americans over the age of 50 don't have enough money saved for retirement. So some of them are going to just keep working. Some of them are really going to shrink and take roommates on or something like that. But many are also saying like, well, you know what? If I can't retire in the city, how about me moving outside of the city, buying perhaps a piece of land, paying it off over 10 years, getting a seller financing deal, paying it off for 10 years, put up a mobile home on there, and then having a dignified retirement. Well, guess what? They're coming to us and our students. We teach this now too. Come to our students to buy these lots. And the second one is actually popped up during COVID and since COVID and has been on freaking fire. And that is basically the people that work from home. Because what we realized is that not everyone wants to live in the city. There is millions of people that would love to have 2 to 5 acres, half an hour outside of town, that they can build their dream home on there, have a few acres, have a horse, have a cow, have some goats, have some chickens, and still be within half an hour at the ballpark or in their office. Like some people work 4 days a week from home now and 1 day a week from the office. So if you're half an hour outside of town, it might take you 30, 45 minutes to get to your office. But therefore, 4 days of the week plus the weekend, you get to be in the environment that you want to be in. So these people have good jobs, remote jobs, usually computer jobs, and they're looking for these pieces of land. And then the last kind of property is the larger acreage. Now we're talking recreational land. We're also talking about homesteading. There's millions of people that want to just have a piece of land to build like a off-the-grid kind of home and go back to nature. There's also lots of, again, during COVID, millions of RVs were sold because people's like, if I can't be in a hotel or if I can't be, like, let's just buy an RV and our family can be a nuclear team, can be together. And we just travel throughout the country. And with, if you add to that, like Starlink by Elon Musk, the satellite dish, you can now actually spend weeks on a 40-acre parcel with full satellite dish access in an RV, enjoy it. When before COVID, it was still attractive, but it usually those 40-acre parcels were like a weekend getaway property. You would go out there for a weekend or you take a week vacation, you spend it out there. And now it's like you can literally make a life out there, and people do that. And people like to have something like there's the doomsday preppers, but a lot of people look for hunting land. They look for, I mean, how would, I mean, if I address the audience, how many people would like to have their own mini ranch out there? Right? Sounds pretty good. And that's what we're talking about here. So, and a lot of these properties just sit there. The owners have had them for 30, 40 years. It might be worth $80,000. The owner is willing to take 40 for it, and you put it on the market and wholesale it for 60 in a matter of a couple of weeks and make $20,000 in the process.
Sounds good to me. So it sounds like you got your infill lots, the small lots in a city. Those are actually pretty hard to find, especially in the big cities like Tacoma, where I live. And then you mentioned the suburban lots, which are just on the outskirts of the city. It sounds like those are the quarter acre to 5 acre kind of lot size. And then you mentioned the recreational lots, which are much larger, 5 to 50 acres, which
400
are
plus even.
400. Yeah, that's a lot. So
the
5
biggest
to
I've
400
ever sold was half a square mile, 320 acres.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So of these, the recreational ones, is there anything that you specifically look for? Do they have to be within a certain distance of a major city as well, or are you looking for like literally anywhere for those larger lots?
So the larger lots, we want them to be between 1 and 3 hours driving distance from a bigger city. Because your buyers for those lots are going to be in that big city. They're going to be the weekend warriors, the RV lovers, the ATV lovers, the hikers, bikers, dirt bikers, hunters kind of guys. And they don't mind driving 3 hours on a Friday afternoon to spend the weekend there. But much further is getting harder. And they need to be attractive in the first place. Like I always like to make a little joke about one area. There's an area called Elko County, Nevada. It's just like 3 hours north of Vegas, a few hours west of Salt Lake City. Great, but it's butt ugly up there. There's lots of 40-acre parcels. You can buy them for $2,500, but they're only worth $5,000 because there's nothing there. There's no water. There's no towns. There's nothing. It's just pure desert. It's hot. It's dusty. It's not pretty. What I'm talking about is think about somewhere in Missouri. Think about somewhere in the Smoky Mountains. Like there's skiing in winter. There's lots of lakes in summer. You got Chattanooga, you got Charleston, you got Atlanta, Georgia. All are 2 hours away from there. You got something like 10 million people close by, and they all love the outdoors. They love the mountains. They love the lakes. They love the hiking. They love the biking. They love all the things that are offered there. It's beautiful. It's rolling hills with pine trees. Boom. That's like a great area to look for these kind of larger lots.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how do you go about finding these? What's your guys' main method of acquisition?
Yeah, to this day, our main and favorite method of acquisition is still direct mail. So we're going because in land, there's about 1/100th of the competition of house flipping. We're not competition free, obviously, right? But if there's absolute fierce, red ocean, bloody competition in the house flipping world, in the household selling world, then we're somewhere down here where the average landowner gets something like 3 solicitations a year for their piece of land. And I got 25 rental houses here in town, and I'm getting probably 20 solicitations a week on these rental houses.
It's funny when you even like we're actually buying a new family home for us right now, and whenever we buy a new house, we don't do flipping anymore, so it's just personal houses. But when we buy new houses, the instant we close, like clockwork, within a couple of weeks, we just start to get mailers. It's crazy. It's just like for single family, it's nuts how many mailers these people get. And so it's definitely tough competition out there. I'm sure if you own 300 acres in the middle of nowhere, there's not a lot of people competing for that. And so you don't.
Even if it's an infill lot, there's an infill lot, you get some people contacting you, but it's far and in between. It's every couple of months or so. It's not a lot. And And then in the path of growth, again, it's the same kind of thing. So what happens is like so direct mail gets us still in a well-selected area a between 2 and 3% response rate.
Oh wow,
And
that's
on
actually pretty good.
one
Yeah.
letter send out, not on like a sequence of a whole bunch like you need to do in the housing area. One letter gets you between 1.5 and 3%, let's say, on average as a response rate. And of course, if you send repeat letters, you can increase that. But there's no need to send out a series of 17 letters or 17 postcards and things like that. We usually send one or two, and that gets us a 2-3% response rate. Then what we do is we go and we do deal analysis, we make offers. But nowadays you can also, of course, back to your question, you can also add cold calling, texting to those kind of things. You just got to make sure that you do it carefully. And more importantly is, I think the most important thing that I want to make sure that we say here is that my wife and I designed our business, and the way we teach it is the same way, so that the business fits our lifestyle, so that it works around our life, not that our life has to accommodate to the business. Because in the house flipping side, as you probably well known, if a seller calls and says, I want to sell this property now, you drop everything and you meet with that seller. Well, what happens in our world is that if a seller has expressed interest, then first of all, we don't even pick up the phone. They go to a call center and pick it up, or an answering machine. Call center obviously costs a little bit more, but you have a live person picking it up. And answering machine costs a little less, but therefore you might have to call them back afterwards. But it's hands off, so I can be at my daughter's soccer game, or at my daughter's rock climbing competition, or at my daughter's whatever she's doing, or at a family trip, and these leads are coming in, and I don't have to touch them, and I can do that as a one-man show because I don't have to have employees for that. And then we tell them that we're making them an offer within 7 to 10 days. Because again, the likelihood that in that same time period, they're getting 5 other offers from other people is close to zero. So that means we can literally go on a week-long trip. Like last week, we had fall break for my daughter. She's 17. She's a junior in high school. We went college visiting. So for an entire week, we just took off. We visited colleges. And now that we're back, we're making offers on some deals that came in during that time. So that means for that, that's why we like direct mail, because if you do texting, you have to respond quicker, right? You text somebody, they text you back. They want an offer in the next 30 minutes or so, because otherwise, why did you text them, right? So you got to keep those things in consideration. But having said that, one of our students is making $1 million a year just texting in this business. So texting absolutely works. Cold calling absolutely works. We're still a fan of direct mail, though. And either way, one of those, we don't text, we hire a texting service. We don't cold call, we hire a cold calling service. So again, it is outsourced. Somebody else done it. We just get the leads, and then we deal with the leads. And that's my preferred way of doing business in the first place. Otherwise, you're buying yourself a job. And who wants that? I want a business that gives me freedom and makes me money.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of direct mail too, because it's a lot less, it's kind of like set it and forget it. And then you're just going to start getting calls over time too, because you can do a mailer and then, multiple months later, somebody will call on that mailer just because, they didn't have the time when they received it, but time passed and all of a sudden they're like, you know what, I do want to sell this. They have your card, they give you a call. And 2 to 3%, that's actually pretty good as a response rate. We do the last mailer I did was for commercial, and it was under 1% was our response rate. So 2 to 3, that's you're sitting pretty when you're getting up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we are running down the clock, but I do want to talk about the exit, because that is the important part of the real estate deal is actually generating the income. So when you buy these, it sounds like you do a lot of wholesales, so you assign the contract to others. Do you do any change of use, any rezoning, anything like that on these deals?
No, but you can. It's more advanced land investing at that point. The standard nuts and bolts deal is a deal where you do wholesaling, but we usually don't assign. We usually do double closes. Because our profit margins are so big that usually if you're signing it and the buyer sees what you're making, they're usually not so happy. Because like if you get a deal for $10,000 and you're assigning it to somebody for $40,000 and the property's worth 70, they're like, dude, you're making 30 grand on this deal and I'm making 30 grand. It raises jealousy. But if you do double closing, they don't see what you make, and it also takes you outside of a lot of the regulations that of the states that don't allow wholesaling anymore and things like that. So because you're actually buying the property, so
Yeah.
you're becoming
And
the owner for 5 minutes and selling it, but you're
a
doing it
double,
using the buyer's money, so you
yeah.
still don't have to bring in your own money.
So a
So
double close for everybody out there, it's when you're everybody's familiar with wholesaling. Double closing is when you buy the property on the closing and then you instantly turn it around and sell it. And so there is technically two transactions. In when you're assigning properties, it's only one transaction. You're just assigning your rights in that contract. But this one, there's actually two contracts, and so it's similar to assigning, but you do have to bring that money and make sure you have it in your pocket on closing.
yeah. It's right. That's right. Well, like actually, you use the buyer's money to pay for everything, or a company doesn't allow that. Then sometimes you have to use transactional funding and borrow the money for a day to do it. But yeah, literally, you have a contract with a seller and a contract with a buyer. You put them both with a title company. The title company sends everyone their documents, signs everything. Then the buyer is the only one that sends in the $70,000 in my example. The title company then takes 10, sends it to the seller, takes $40,000. We said it was a $40,000 wholesale, and the value was $70,000. So the title company, the buyer sends in $40,000. This title company now sends 10 to the seller, keeps two for themselves, and sends basically $28,000 to you. And you just made $28,000 without using any money. And the buyer never sees that you made that kind of money because they just bought a property for $40,000. That's it.
There you
Right.
go.
So that's how it typically works. We also love doing seller financing, particularly on the deals that we get really cheap. So if I get a $30,000 deal for $5,000, God, again, it's been in the family forever. The people that passed away, the heir sits on it, sits 2,000 miles away, doesn't care about it, doesn't want to pay property taxes. Says like, yeah, you can have it for $5,000, $6,000. So let's say you offer $5,000 for it, you get it accepted. I love taking those deals, marketing them up to close to market value to something like $25,000, and then asking for a 20 or 25% down payment. So on a deal like that, I might get $6,000 as a down payment, which is enough for me to pay the seller $5,000, pay the title company $1,000, and basically now I've bought a property without using my own money for $5,000. I've paid the title company without using my own money, and now at the same time, I turn around and I have and the buyer still owes me $19,000 because I sold it for 25. I got a $6,000 down payment. They owe me 19. So now these 19 are probably going to be paid off now over the next 7 years at $500 a month with a 13 to 15% interest rate. And I'm getting $500 a month now for the next 7 to 8 years. And I have zero money in the deal, and every single payment is pure profit.
So you've sold me. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. I just took a peek at the clock. We have run it down, so it's time to jump into the quick question round. Are you ready?
Sounds good. Let's do it. Yes.
All right. It starts with education. Could be any form. Could be movies. Could be books. Could be a podcast you listen to, a conference you went to, whatever. But I need two recommendations: one for general life wisdom, and then one for real estate.
All right. So I love I don't have enough time lately to read a lot of books, but I listen to podcasts, and I love the Diary of a CEO
Hmm.
with Stephen whatever the last name of it is. I keep forgetting what his name is. With Stephen Bartlett. As a British guy, interviews some of the most fascinating international people and high caliber people. And it's a combination of like some of that is pure business, some of them. And he's a CEO of a company. He is like equivalent of a Shark Tank guy in England,
Hmm.
and in their TV show. So he's super smart and a great book. And in terms of real estate, I learn a lot from the people that I interview myself. I have my own podcast called the Jack Bosch Show. Very modest, I know. Just I named it that simply because I want to take it in different directions and not
Yeah.
just real
Yeah.
estate,
All
but
right.
90% of that is real estate. So and then
Related.
there's
Yeah.
there's lots of really good real estate podcasts out there too.
Yeah, I've actually been tempted to do that with this podcast, just because I really want to interview. I just love business, and I don't. real estate's my bread and butter. It's what I really like to do, but I also just like talking about other types of businesses. And so I've thought about changing the show to just some other more agnostic title, so I could add in people that do like vent. I just had a guy I was talking about vending machines, and it was pretty interesting. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Real estate definitely. If it's called the Real Estate Investing Club, we can't we can't talk about anything else but real estate.
Yeah.
All right, next question is for your younger self. Let's go back to the Jack who was just coming over from the Germany from back in 1997. Go back to him, look him in the eye, give him one piece of advice moving forward.
Uh, I would say really two pieces of advice, and that is pick something that you know, pick a business that fulfills four criteria. Number one, that it needs to be designed to be profitable. Like a job is not designed to be profitable. Like you see the people, the CEOs that make millions of dollars. Well, it's one out of 10,000 that makes it up there, right? Most everyone else makes between 50 and 200 grand in a job somewhere. Like you'll be shocked. Even like the management, higher management level of big companies, they don't make more than that. So pick something that is designed to be profitable. Pick something that you can that also creates cash flow that you can do part time and that is virtual, and then figure out how to scale it the fastest possible way. Like if there's one thing, we scaled our business pretty fast and we then turned it into a multifamily empire and so on and so forth. But if I could go back, I would take a couple of the things that we've done and scale them even faster. Because once you got something like, and there's like, you gotta hit the iron when it's hot or whatever, say it, that basically when the time is right and the market is right and you figured something out, go as big as you can, because all it takes sometimes is 2-3 years of like just massively going big and you're done for life.
Makes a lot of sense. I love it. All right, next question is about the US. It's a big place. There is a lot of opportunity out there. Give me the single metro you're most excited about investing in today. All right, we just had to take a quick break there because I got like 500 calls from my property manager. For you guys, it was probably like 2 seconds, but we're back into it, and we are on to the question about finding deals. It all starts with getting in contact with the seller, and there are many ways to generate leads. So, what is your favorite way to find new deals?
All right. Actually, sorry. You had asked me, but I hadn't answered yet. Sorry, if you need to pause again.
Okay, actually, we skipped the question. We're going back, and everybody listening, I'm sorry. Sometimes this happens. You get an emergency that happens at a property, and you got to deal with it real quick. But we're back into it. So the question was, what metro in the U.S. are you most excited about investing in today?
Exactly right. So this is a hard question to answer because we do land flipping nationwide, and really my personal favorite markets are just as I mentioned, outskirts of larger metro areas that are growing. So what happens is like if an area is super fast growing, it's actually not necessarily the best area to do deals in, because then everyone knows about values in the area and everyone knows that prices are going up and everyone is in that area, so there's some more competition. So we like kind of like the hidden gems. And if you look at it, people say like California is too expensive. Well, we do lots of deals in California because we're not doing them necessarily in LA. But if you go outside, half an hour outside of LA, you're in some areas that people are moving to where there's lots of deals to be had. Also, if you go outside of any kind of big metro area that's growing, or if you're going to the rural area, I mentioned one area, the Smoky Mountains, is very much is an exciting area to do deals in because a lot of people want recreational land there. If I take the question though on the multifamily side of things that we also do, I'm excited about basically the fastest growing cities with with if I may say so, a Republican leadership, because that means not that it's better or less good, it's simply less laws are better for
Easier
real
to do
estate,
deals with. Yep.
right? Yeah, so therefore I'm very bullish on Texas. I'm very bullish on Arizona. And outside of the hurricanes, I'm very bullish on Florida.
Okay, Texas, Arizona, Florida makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I almost started focusing on Florida until I got a peek into the insurance costs
Yeah.
out there,
That,
and I just it's gone. There's been too much variability in the insurance costs in Florida, and so I chose not to focus on that. But Florida's still a good state, and it still has a huge influx of population, which is what you're looking for in real estate. So. Good
yeah.
call outs. And that leads us to the next question, which I have already mentioned, which we backtracked from. It's about finding deals. You've already touched on this, but we're going to ask it anyways. It all starts with getting in contact with the seller. So, what is your favorite way to generate leads and find new deals?
It is. It is still direct mail. It is direct mail, cold calling, and texting. Texting is obviously the most dangerous. So you need to, because of all the different laws on texting. So you need to do both cold calling and texting through professional companies that do it for you. That have suppressed all the do not calls, all the do not texts, all the people that could get you in trouble, all the litigators, now the known people that sue you for it. And so don't try this on your own. But to my knowledge, there's really no such thing like a do not mail list. Otherwise, when you mentioned when you move into a new house, when you buy a house for yourselves, what do you get within a matter of 2 weeks? You get from every Walmart, from every Target, from every home improvement store. You get everything. You get your mailbox is cluttered because they get a notification that you moved there, that you bought it, and they buy the data and they send you full of junk mail. Well, if that would be illegal, nobody could do it. So there's no such thing like a do not mail list. So mailing is the most open way. And again, as I mentioned, with land, you still get very high response rates.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I've actually gotten people who've reached out to ask us to ask to be removed from a mailing list, and I always think like it's mail. You just throw it away. It's not a huge inconvenience.
Yeah.
But yeah, that it's a good call out on the safety aspect of mail. There are a lot of laws around anything digital, really, even email,
Yeah.
text, cold calls. There's laws around those. If you don't take out the DNC lists, then you are putting yourself at risk there. So no such thing with mail. It's a really easy way to do it. A little bit more expensive, but I feel like it's the bang is still there.
Yeah.
Leads us to the next question. This is about lessons learned. Not every deal we get into goes the way we expect it. In fact, most of the times something goes wrong and we get to learn a lesson. So, what was a deal that went a little bit sideways for you? And then what was the lesson you pulled from it?
So the deal went sideways on the land side of things. One time we started thinking we're smarter than we really are. And we started dropping the fundamentals and not doing all the due diligence that we usually do after we have a deal under contract. So we were in an area where we had already bought properties. We had flipped a bunch of half an acre properties. So great. They sold really well. We made like $15,000-$20,000 profits on each of them. We had done a dozen of them. So we went back out in the area and we got a whole bunch of quarter acre properties offered to us. And we're like, great. We looked around, there's houses all over the place. We're like, great, we know the area, all good. Ended up buying these properties with our own money. And then realized on the way, when we then did a little research, that the county had changed the zoning rules a while ago already, but that the minimum building size was half an acre.
Oof.
So with the half acre properties that first time around we sold, that wasn't a problem, right? But with the quarter acre parcels, they're basically unbuildable property. So a few of them, we had two next to each other. We were able to combine them and sell them. But at the end, we were stuck with 5 properties that we ended up selling at a loss. But the raise wasn't a big loss. So that's the nice part of it. We only lost like $1,000 or $2,000 a property. So we lost between $5,000 and $10,000. Which we made up by selling some of these double ones for a profit. So net, we still made money. But the lesson learned was we have our checklist of things that we need to check. And it's like an airplane pilot. Just because you've done it 500 times or 5,000 times doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it anymore. So we learned to go back to the fundamentals and really execute and check the checkbox on every single list and saying a lot to make sure that we don't think we're smarter than we are.
Yeah. Yeah, the due diligence period is the most important time of your ownership of real estate. Making sure that what you're buying is what you expect to be buying. And so, yeah, have that checklist, go down it step by step, go through every single step and make sure that, it really does check out for you.
Yeah.
And that leads to the very last question. This is for the listeners. You've given us a lot to think about. I'm sure people want to reach out, get in contact with you. This is a two-parter. Where can they find you? And then what can they expect when they reach out?
Okay. Very good. Yeah, the simplest way to find out, you obviously can subscribe to my podcast, The Jack Bosch Show. Find me on social media all over the place. But there's one link that I want to give out, which is Land Profit Fun. Fun, like having fun, Fun, Land Profit Fun. If you go there, you can download a free 30-day blueprint that in pretty detailed, good detail, gives you the step-by-step instructions on how this land strategy actually works. And that's what you expect when you get there. You can basically go in there and then we also and once you're there, you might get an invitation here and there, or you can go to our websites and upcoming events. There's but once you go to Land Profit Fund, that's the place to start to learn more about this.
Cool. So Land Profit Fun. I will put that link in the show notes. If you guys want to reach out, just click a little more in the description. It'll pull down that full description. In there, you can find Jack's link. All right, man. That wraps it up. Thank you very much for hopping on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. For everybody that's with us today, thank you guys for showing up. You are the reason we do this. So if you guys have any questions, reach out to me at Gabe at therealestateinvestingclub.com. If you guys want to support the show, just give us a review on anything you're listening to this on. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great week. Keep rocking real estate, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.